Hello there guys, and welcome to another one of my reviews. Today we are driving a very interesting car from BMW once again. This is the new refreshed 5 Series, the plug-in hybrid model. Well, actually one of the plug-in hybrid models, because we have two in the range these days. I'm going to talk about that later on, but for now let's discuss the main changes on the outside on the 530e xDrive, the model we have here. So as I told you before in other reviews, the 5 Series got a mild facelift for 2021. Actually, the facelift happened last year, but this year all the cars are now available for purchase in most parts of the world. So what you're going to notice is the new 5 Series has a new set of headlights with a new LED strip. The so-called Corona rings are no longer rings. They are L-shaped right now. Up front, we also have a different design for the front bumper, depending on the level of equipment you choose. Should you go for luxury line, should you go for M Sport, we have a slightly different design for the front bumper. But as I said, it will look different depending on the model line you go for. And the front kidney grills are also quite different today. They are slightly bigger and have a more 3D design, a sharper design up front. Other than that, the car remains roughly the same. The proportions are similar. You'll notice that, as is the case on most BMWs these days, the short overhangs up front define the design of the cars. So you have a really short distance from the edge of the wheel to the front of the car. The one we're driving today, as I said, is a plug-in hybrid. So we have a charger over here, a charger cover for the electric motor, and the battery is stored in the back. On plug-in hybrid models and on electric models, you can also get aerodynamically enhanced wheels. This car actually came with them from stock from factory. It's a 2,600 euro option in Germany, but since it's winter time, we had to swap them out with some different wheels and different tires. We have Pirelli winter tires on this car and M Performance blacked out wheels, which actually look really good. But the aerodynamically enhanced wheels will add a bit of electric range when you actually use them. If that electric range is actually worth it, that extra electric range is worth it, it's worth the 2,600 euros, is up to you. But they do look very cool. From the sides, nothing has changed on the 5 Series facelift, but you will notice a new set of taillights around the back, which have a 3D design and LED lighting behind them. But that's about it. What I will mention though about this car is that if you go for the plug-in hybrid, the storage capacity in the boot will have to suffer. The batteries are theoretically stored somewhere in this area, under the seats and in the boot. So you will lose some storage capacity. If you're buying this car for a practical reason, you might want to keep that in mind, because the boot itself has a completely different shape. You have some clever storage spaces underneath the floor, but it's really not the same thing as on the regular 5 Series. Inside the cabin, you'll notice that the changes are very slim too, and they are mostly related to technology. Hardware changes or design changes are very limited. I'd say non-existent, but there is one difference compared to the pre-facelift model, which is the xDrive screen. Not on all models though. It's just the top tier version that gets the 12.3-inch screen like the one we have here today. And it's rather bulky and big, so it will take a bit of getting used to. I much prefer the older, smaller screen of 10 inches. It's enough anyway, but people seem to prefer larger screens these days. But other than that, the interior of this 530e, the facelift model, is very similar to the one of the pre-facelift model. You have plenty of room inside. Everything is easy to use and well placed ergonomically, I would say. the materials are of the best quality as long as you're willing to pay for it. Now, the car we are driving has the top of the line seats up front. Some people call it the 7 Series seats because they have all the features you can get in a 7 Series. That means you have heated seats, you have ventilation embedded in them, you have massage, the massage function, and they are very comfortable and extremely adjustable. You can adjust just about everything about them. So yeah, then we have the black leather all around, black trims on the dash, which are now made of fine line open pore trims, open pore wood. So everything looks good and feels good to the touch, but it does come at a price. I mean, we have Napa leather inside a 5 Series, so you know that is going to affect the overall price of the car. The one we're driving is priced at around 92,000 euros, which is quite a lot. You can get a lot of cars in this kind of price range, but then again, this is a fully optioned out car with 4-zone climate control and everything else in between. So you should keep that in mind as well. But as I said, plenty of room up front, plenty of room in the back for 4 adults, even of my size. I'm 6 feet tall and about 250 pounds. And, you know, not every car is going to fit me, but I have no problem in the 5 Series. So now we should move on to the technical side of things. The update of the 5 Series range also brought along a couple of technical changes under the hood. In the case of the 530e, it brought along a new generation of batteries. As you might be aware, BMW has an entire department, an entire building filled with doctors and engineers and chemists and everything in between, located near Munich, that is specialized in developing new battery technology and new electric motors to make them more efficient and energy dense as we move on. So the 530e gets the 4th generation xDrive powertrain, which means the battery, even though it didn't change in size compared to the pre-facelift model, can now store more energy. Basically, on the pre-facelift model, you had a 9.1 kilowatt hour battery. That was the capacity of the battery. On the new model, you have a 12 kilowatt hour battery. And that, considering not much else has changed, should improve the electric range of this car. And if you're watching this video, you're probably curious about the electric range. You're interested in a plug-in hybrid because you want to, you know, save the planet and save your wallet a few bucks and so on. So, according to BMW, the 530e xDrive, the one we're having, because you can get the 530e in rear-wheel drive, guys, too. So the 530e xDrive comes with a range of between 48 and 54 kilometers. That will depend on your tire selection and the wheel selection. This car was originally configured with aerodynamic wheels. That's a 2,600 euro option, but winter came along, we had to put on the M Performance wheels. So, you know, the range will be affected a bit. Then the weather outside isn't particularly nice right now. At the time of filming, right now, we have a temperature of minus 1.5 degrees Celsius. So it's really cold, and that will impact the range and battery life on board this car. So during my time with the car, I saw a range of around up to 20 miles. That's about it. 30 kilometers. That was the most I could squeeze out of it. And I think that's a worst case scenario because it was really cold out, really heavy traffic. I had to use the heating a lot and so on. I didn't use eco mode. I didn't use any of that nonsense. I used the car just like I would use a normal conventional internal combustion engine car, just to see how well this car would perform in electric mode compared to a regular car. Because I'm sure not a lot of the customers are willing to make all sorts of trade-offs just to drive a plug-in hybrid. So that's about the maximum range I could squeeze out of it, 30 kilometers. Now I should mention that the car has a couple of driving modes. For the battery, you have 2 settings. You can leave it in auto, or you can use the battery save mode. You have a button here. When you press it, you can set a target value for the battery control mode. Basically, you can use the internal combustion engine to recharge the battery. And you can set a certain level. If you wanted to charge it up to 50%, 60%, or even 100%, you can do that. Then there's different driving modes available in this car compared to a regular 5 Series. Normally the car starts off in hybrid mode. Hybrid mode means the car will choose for itself what kind of power to use. So it will choose whether to use electric power alone or to include the internal combustion engine as well in the process. Most of the time I notice the car will drive on electricity alone until it depletes its battery. It's an interesting take. I mean, the goal of these cars is to reduce the CO2 emissions as much as possible and reduce the fuel consumption as well. So when you start off in hybrid mode, you're going to drive about 30 kilometers on electric power alone, and then the internal combustion engine will kick on. The fuel consumption will depend on how much charge you have in your battery. If your battery is full, as I said, you can cover this much on electricity alone. After that, the engine will kick in. And once the engine will kick in, it will start burning fuel. I noticed that if the battery was depleted, the average fuel consumption in heavy traffic was around 12 liters of petrol per 100 kilometers covered. It can go up to 18. I saw 18 liters per 100 kilometers covered when I used the battery control settings, and the internal combustion engine, on top of having to move along the car, it had to recharge the battery as well. So of course the energy consumption, the fuel consumption went up. So that's when the battery is depleted. But if you have charge in your battery, the fuel consumption will be significantly lower. Now let's say the car sips 10 liters of fuel per 100 kilometers covered normally, right? With the battery discharge. If you cover like 30 kilometers electric power alone, and then you do another 20 kilometers using the internal combustion engine, your average will be 4 liters per 100 kilometers covered. So that will be pretty low. For a car with 300 horsepower, that's low. So the fuel consumption will vary. As I said, you get about 30 kilometers of electric range out of a battery. That's what you should expect. You could get lower figures, you could get higher figures. If it wasn't so cold out, I think my figures would have been closer to 40 kilometers. But what about the engine? Well, the 530e, the 3 and the 0 on the boot tell you what kind of power you should expect from it. Normally the car has 252 horsepower at its disposal. It's the same figure as the old 530e. However, this car has a extra boost feature, which basically means it can deliver 40 extra horsepower thanks to its electric motor for up to 10 seconds. So the power output goes up to 292 horsepower, but that's only when extra boost or e-boost is available. And that's only for about 10 seconds, as I told you. So under the hood, you have a 184 horsepower, 2-liter petrol engine. And in between it and the gearbox, you have an electric motor that's good for 109 horsepower. That electric motor is basically housed in the gearbox assembly, replacing the torque converter somehow. So combined, you get 252 horsepower and up to 292 horsepower and 420 Newton meters of torque combined. Those are very good figures, and considering how little fuel this car can sip, I think it's a very good deal for a lot of people. Now, you should know that I wouldn't recommend this car unless you're planning on charging it, because it would defeat its purpose. Now, this car was created to be used as a plug-in hybrid. I saw a research done recently by a governing body in the EU saying that, you know, plug-in hybrids are not as efficient as people claim them to be once the battery drains up. That is true. That's normal, because if you're not using this car on electric mode or with the battery charged and everything and all that, this car, of course, is going to sip more fuel than a conventional 2-liter petrol-powered car, because it has some extra batteries in the boot, it has an extra electric motor on board, and all that piles on weight that, of course, ruins your MPG number. So you should only buy this car if you have a way of charging it either at home or at the office. And if you're daily commute is around 30 kilometers or 20 miles, you should be good using this car in electric mode most of the time during the week, and just kicking in the engine whenever you're leaving town and you want to go for a longer trip without having to worry about range anxiety as a normal electric car would, electric car driver would. So you need to keep that in mind. Speaking of charging, unfortunately most plug-in hybrid cars don't have fast charging available. Some are getting it now, but most of them run on a single phase charger, which means you will be able to replenish about 3.6 kilowatts per hour into the battery at most. If you're using a home socket, that's going to be a longer period of time. It's going to take about 4 hours to recharge this car using a 3.6 kilowatt charger. 3.5 hours, 3.5 hours, that's how long it should take. So it's quite slow to charge only 12 kilowatts. Mercedes is introducing fast charging on its plug-in hybrid models, and I think that is a very, very good idea moving towards an electrified future. That said, this has been my review of the BMW 5 Series. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to, of course, like, share, and subscribe to keep this channel alive. Until next time, don't forget to feed your passions. Ciao.